This is Capitalize Your Finances, the show representing you, a select group of excited, ready, and fired up listeners seeking to potentially maximize your money moves and get after it. We don't settle for generic advice of always and nevers. Our currency is our intellect, and we constantly seek the logical way of likely creating advantages to potentially maximize wealth for our personal and unique situations. The show brings you this step-by-step framework to capitalize your finances in the aspects of your financial situation, and we strive to explore strategies and ideas to potentially help you capitalize on your financial decisions. We are Capitalizers, and this is our show.
Welcome back to Capitalize Your Finances. As always, I'm your host, Christopher A. Panayiotou, the Cap in Capitalize. And today we have a very special guest, Lou Diamond, who is, I have to read all of this off, he is the host of the Thrive Loud podcast and two-time author of Master the Art of Connecting and Speak Easy, Connect with Every Conversation. Lou, welcome to the show.
Chris, I am beyond honored to be here today. Now I love Home and Homes, where you get to be. I had Chris on my program and had a great chance to hear all about his stuff, and now I get to sit in the other chair and be attacked by the Cap Man. So
yes,
I'm looking forward to it.
Kindly attacked. Very, yeah, more passive aggressive.
Kind of like gently prodded,
caressed, if you will.
If you will.
And you know what's been fascinating as we've gotten to know each other. You know the finance industry more than most because you used to be on my side of the aisle before you got your wits about yourself and decided to peace out. And I wanted to get into all of that today. But before we dive into the present day life of Lou, which now that I'm saying that could be a sitcom.
I think it is. Yeah.
I first wanted to ask you, because you wear so many hats, how would you best describe yourself professionally?
Sorry, for those who are listening to this program, I did put on a hat.
Yes.
How would I best describe myself professionally? I'm a sales and leadership consultant, and I speak and write about connecting. I think that's the high-level piece of what I bring to the world. And the sales and leadership consultants is that I work with top performers, organizations, companies in their sales efforts to better connect to prospects, in their marketing to better connect their message to their audience, and to leaders to better connect to their people. And the power of connection is something that I've always been around. And the way that I'm actually helping people to do that is to learn how they can connect in every single conversation. As you know, I have this book, one of the books you mentioned. It's a speakeasy way of doing things. And that is my platform that I'm helping everyone try and understand how they could use that connection to connect, engage, and win in whatever they set out to do, personally or professionally. That's the work that I do on the grounding and grinding each day with clients and people. And the speaking and writing about connecting piece, obviously, you know, I have a podcast in that area. I'm a professional speaker and speak to audiences about this same message. And the books that I write or the messages I deliver are all in this way on helping people understand how important it is to connect. And this is from the lessons that I've learned, not just as a podcaster or as a consultant in my career in financial services and my career in consulting and business, working in my dad's jewelry store growing up. All of that have been lessons that I've understood how you need to be a better connector, how you need to be to grow your world with others so that you can really enjoy and thrive in the benefits of everything you do. And that's why the business that I run is called Thrive. Hopefully yes. that encapsulates everything for you.
It totally does. And you mentioned your previous professional life. And I actually wanted to touch on that because, you know, going back into the first part of your career, you worked at Deloitte and Merrill Lynch, if I remember my research, correct, for a combo of 17 years before transitioning into the world of where you are today. So can you first take us back to what your career path was looking like in the good old days? Because back in the day, like, podcasting wasn't even a thing. What was your vision from Deloitte and Merrill and where you wanted to go?
So when I was in consulting, and I'll even rewind further back from Deloitte, I worked at what is now Accenture. It was called Anderson Consulting back in the Neolithic era, which is where actually I come from. But currently, what you've just described, the work in Deloitte, I always worked in financial services. And using this connecting analogy, Chris, I was always trying to connect the problems and solve them and try and figure out the best way to maybe it might be connecting people, might be better ways that people could be communicating. A lot of strategies that I did in consulting and financial services. But I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and I guess I can blame Michael Lewis for writing Liar's Poker. I've always wanted to be on that front end in financial services. I worked on just about every single trading floor in the 1990s, Goldman Sachs, Salomon Brothers, JP Morgan, Merrill Lynch, to name a few. And some that are still around today, some that are not. And Lehman Brothers was in that mix. So was Kidder Peabody and many others. And a lot of the work that I was doing was consulting projects in financial services. And then this thing called the internet came up, which was something you didn't mention here, between Deloitte and Merrill. I ran business development for a company called Organic, which was building like the first websites for all the companies that were out there, from some of the largest financial service, automobile companies. We were like the original people building the first websites on the internet, professional digital design firms and digital technology firms, which was amazing and some of the most creative and inspiring times I ever had. But it was always around that financial services type of client from the experience I had in consulting. And after a little bit of a going up and watching the internet burst and boom right in the early 2000s, I never felt like I had that quench, that thirst filled, or my appetite filled, getting to be in the front side of Wall Street. And I knew that I had it, but knew that I'd have to kind of take a couple of steps back to then be able to launch forward, which is something, by the way, I highly recommend to anyone in their career. It might not necessarily fit, but if you really wanted to do something and you really wanted to be in an industry and know that you can be successful in it, but it might not be a parallel move, you should do it. And I did. It was a little difficult because there I was taking a steps back from being a very successful consultant and business leader and going into a totally different industry, working at Merrill Lynch in institutional sales, fixed income sales, if you would, on the interest rate derivatives product. I was literally, and I knew none of what these things were, by the way, when I started. But I was dancing around it in the consulting and the work that I did with Organic, and met some of the people there. Chris, it was educational. I have every series document you could possibly think of, from like every number, 3, 7, 63, 24, all those things, working on every desk, learning all the rules, learning about how to sell and market those type of products. And now I want to make it clear for those who aren't familiar, because we were very close to a lot of those that were in a lot of products that destroyed a lot of Wall Street in the 2000s up to 2008. We were the products that saved it. These were interest rate derivatives and swaps, and my clients were the largest financial service institutions out there. And that's who I covered, and that's who I served. And I took all of that connecting skills that I had in consulting and growing up and working in business and in business development at Organic. And I took all of that and with now the product knowledge and the market knowledge and put it to use. And I can't even begin to tell you how my career just started to hit an unbelievable spike and kept going rocket ship, specifically when the world blew up.
Yeah.
We used to joke the work that I did, Chris, my career was negatively convex. However well the economy was doing was how in the opposite direction was how poorly we were doing. But when the economy went to the crapper, we were the busiest place in the entire world because we were the land of the last reserve, if you would. And the clients that we were doing, we were helping to save financial institutions, specifically in late 2008, and when all of that was just upside down, because everyone needed to mark their place in line when Lehman Brothers went out. And all of my clients, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, all the federal home loan banks, all the farm credit banks, these were the people who I covered. And they were keeping the entire financial infrastructure alive. And also then led to a lot of the rule changes that you are all too familiar with. Hashtag Dodd-Frank and all of that stuff. And that's when my career did not become as much fun because it became more administrative than it was working with it. So, but that ride in the old days and the stuff that you described was just absolutely amazing, because such great people, such great clients. I loved the excitement of the markets. I still love the excitement of what they can do, ups and downs. But at the time after those, I can't believe it was 17 years, that window that you described there. I had ridden the roller coaster a couple of times up and down, enough for me to say, what else do I need to quench? What other things am I craving to do? So that's up to the point that I probably should stop talking and let you ask a question.
You're the guest, man. The floor is yours. I will say this. It's interesting. So shortly after your appearance, which will be releasing in September, even though we're recording at the end of August, one of my all-time favorite investors, Guy Spears, is coming on, and I've followed him since he came out with his book in 2014. You fast forward, we become nice acquaintances, messaging back and forth. And in his book, he mentions '08, and it's interesting because even if you were super busy during that time, this is kind of a tangent off of the questions I had for you, but in moments like that, even if you know what you're doing and you have all the good intentions in the world, if you weren't terrified, there's something wrong. Like, there is something gravely, gravely wrong. But you actually brought up a good point in the fact that, and it sounds bad for you and I to maybe say, hey, when the tide goes out, that's when we do really, really well. Right. But it's the honest to God truth, because isn't it interesting? I can't tell you how many people I've interviewed in the world of finance, or was in the world of finance, where they go, 2001 or 2002, we had our biggest growth year ever, and 2008 or 2022, right? I can speak to that one. And it's sad because emotionally, people let that get the best of them. Yeah. But, it's one of those things where you kind of got to do what you got to do. It's defeating.
If there were two, by the way, it's not only defeating, but there's two great lessons that I learned working on Wall Street, which I'll share in a minute. But as you were mentioning, that window of time, 2008, for your viewers and listeners, definitely go check out, if you haven't seen the movie. It's called Margin Call. It was written by Zachary Quinto, and he leads in it. And it's not. There's actually some amazing stories about the movie, how they had to film it, because Jeremy Irons, who's actually acting as the head of one of the largest investment banks, they had some visa issues, and I think they had to fly him in illegally on a helicopter to film like one day of filming or something like that to get this stuff done. But there's a line in the movie where they're trying to track someone down. This is right ahead of the financial crisis, that everything's about to go, and it is a snapshot of what actually happened at Goldman Sachs, just to be clear, because Goldman was ahead of the game on certain things. But Zachary Quinto's character is looking out the window at just regular people passing by, and he goes, these people have no idea what's about to happen. And I remembered my whole world was coming in. I mean, Merrill Lynch on September 14th, going to the 15th, was acquired by Bank of America. Lehman Brothers went out. It was 6 months before Bear Stearns went away. And JP Morgan Chase ended up taking them. And nobody can understand what was going on because the markets were in such turmoil. But the biggest day for all of it was when AIG, the insurance company, and so that September, was recognizing that they couldn't cover a lot of the CDS losses that were going on, which I'm going into the specifics with your listeners. But that quote in that movie, every time I've seen it, when he says nobody knows what's going on, that's kind of what it felt like from the seats that we were sitting in, because we were trying to save whatever, we were going to be merged with Bank of America, and there was a month of chaos. All of our clients were trying to figure out how they can get in line in the bankruptcy claim with Lehman Brothers and what the positions were, and the markets were crazy, and we were the ones providing the prices, and we didn't even know if we would have a job or not. So to your point about being scared, what I will say is a line that one of the lessons that I learned from Wall Street from my mentor, Harley Bassman, who worked at Merrill for a very long time, then Bank of America, and then out at PIMCO at one point, and now is independent. He's one of the geniuses of mortgage finance, to be specific, and interest rate derivatives and mortgage options. And his line was, "It's never different this time." And what he meant is that We always, and specifically in 2008, we were saying, oh, it's different this time. The world is coming to an end. We said it in 2001. We said it in 1987. We said it in 1962. All these different years that the world was coming to an end. Oh, it's different this time. But it's never different this time. And in any business that you're in, doesn't matter where it is, there are natural ups and downs, and they might feel different because of the severity or the in the moment component. But the really great financiers, the really great people who can manage businesses have to understand and prepare for these days, and prepare for them, like, getting a chance to work with someone like you for your own portfolios and how to manage your funds, how to manage your business, how to manage your brand. You can't always assume that everything is going to be the same pattern, straight across or straight up or straight down. There will be the ebbs and flows of career, and it will always have that sense. And if you go in with that perspective, that something will go wrong and something will go right, and there'll be extremes, there'll be peaks and valleys, it will help you manage not only your finances and your success of your career or the challenges you face, but it also help manage your soul and your heart and your being, because that is life. And it's a great comparison to see how financial markets and the economy and our politics and all these things, they have these natural ebbs and flows. The hard part is that it just feels so concentrated when you're in that moment. And just to always remember that lesson that Harley taught me, that it's never different this time.
No. Well, and I can tell you, so when I started in this business, I was an intern at UBS in September of 2008. So talk about getting kicked in the teeth like day 2. And I'll tell you, that gave me a huge bias of, okay, the next time something like this comes around, I have to obsess over working around. When this time comes around, I will not feel this way ever again. And if you think about that, I mean, that was, right, 2008, up until really 2022, didn't really come, right? So you kind of look like an idiot to a lot of people because they think, oh, it's never going to come. But then when it does, suddenly, like I said, when the tide goes out, you realize who's swimming naked. And we were properly clothed. Now, for you, one question I had was, so you worked at Deloitte, you worked at Merrill, huge institutions. What did you take away from both of those experiences that made you a better podcast host?
Oh, wow. That's a spectacular question. I would say that, well, keep in mind that in all those instances, the roles that I played were in a business development sales, client-facing role. Obviously, in consulting, you're in that role all the time. And one of the things that I had to do, and I've learned, is how to ask great questions, and how asking great questions start conversations that build relationships with who you do business with. And I brought that set of thinking and the way that I communicate into the way that I interview. And a lot of the lessons that I've learned, like my natural instinct might be to voice an opinion or drop my knowledge of what I've learned, because I've learned a thing or two over the past 30 years of working. What I will say is I learn more when I ask great questions. And I'm more fascinated in asking and listening to what somebody has to say than being the one talking and telling. And that's actually one of the keys to speak easy. And those lessons working on Wall Street were understanding what was the problem my client had, understanding at Deloitte what the real issue that needed to be solved was. And I think, when people look at these large organizations and you're working for them, you have to make them smaller in your work to be successful. The ones who find that the niche within those companies and their expertise makes you incredibly valuable, or you grow a business within the business and you put on that entrepreneurial hat. Those were the skills that I developed to be successful within the careers of those organizations. And I carried a lot of that over into how I run my own organization in that same type of thinking. But as a podcaster, definitely how I ask the questions and listen to what people have to say, because that makes the conversation more engaging and increases the likelihood that I'll connect better with them.
Well, and I also wanted to ask, from a financial standpoint, just because this is a
That's what
financial
the show's
podcast,
about. Yeah.
right? Kind of sort of important. What pieces of financial wisdom did you acquire from those careers that have stuck with you the most?
Aside from it's never different this time, because that was
aside from that one,
yeah, that would be one. That was a big one. I think the other one is, I think I really learned about how important great leadership is within organizations or within areas on who's going to, the great leaders are the ones who succeed and have the best financial aspects of it. I think if you looked at really good companies and great products, if this is, and I'll spin this to an equity side because I did dabble in that area at one point in my training. Think about how successful a company would be or how productive they would turn out. I do not think you can underestimate how important not only the leader of the company is, but the whole leadership team and how well connected they are on the success of how that organization will be. And that, by the way, that includes my Wall Street firms, my own and the competitors who I went against, and also the organizations we supported and which ones were going to succeed and do well. I got a good front row seat to see a lot of these mortgage servicers and originators that blew a lot of things up in the 2004, 5, 6 that were incredibly successful, and you could look at their bottom lines and say, oh my God, these companies are incredible. Mm-hmm. But if you got a chance to meet some of those leaders, or maybe the way that they were thinking or where their priorities were they just after making that quick buck, or were they thinking about their people and a great organization and building a great offering or servicing their clients? These were the things that I looked at that I said, this is what is so important, because you can see that has always been the one thing that stays true. And you can be distracted by shiny, bright objects like anybody else. Entrepreneurs get it all the time. The key is focusing on delivering that great value to who your customer is, who you serve. And if you are looking at investing in a company, know what that leadership team is about and what they're about. Like people have those like corporate mantras and those slogans, and a lot of people think it's Kool-Aid and it's just whatever. The really good ones, the ones that I learned on Wall Street, are the ones you should put your money in and invest in the long runs, are the ones that understand and are in sync with you, but also are true to it. And their people love working there, and it's one of the best places to work. And people are, even though they might not be the highest paying places, they want to be there, because there's a culture and environment there, or the leadership is setting the tone for great future direction and is constantly changing and innovating over and over and over again. That was the lesson I learned from a lot of Wall Street business that I had done, of how important that is to the success of a company I would ever put $1 into investing.
And it's interesting you say that. I can tell you personally, for years, it was frustrating because I focused so much on the quantitative side of things. Mm-hmm. And then I also lived by, what's the mantra, actions speak louder than words. However, that is a flawed statement, because some people are so manipulative with their words that they can mask the action, which could have been negative. And so for me now, it's the results speak louder than everything.
Yeah.
And you listen to how these people talk, and then you look at the background and the results of what they actually did. That is infinitely more important than any number you can throw out. I wanted to ask too, because most people in our industry, once they're in, they're kind of golden handcuffed, locked in. And you weren't here for like 2 years. I mean, almost 2 decades, and then you decided to tip out. And so what was that tipping point that made you want to step out of the world of Wall Street and into podcasting, being an author, and consulting on your own?
The joking comment I would have here was a momentary lapse of reason or insanity. No. Well, the world was changing around me. And I'm going to state something that I've shared before, but it's important. I wasn't happy. I know this sounds really weird, but I'm a genuinely happy person for the time that you've gotten to meet me, Chris. I'm usually smiling. I'm pretty energetic. I'm very upbeat. I am because I love connecting with people. But in what I was surrounded with and the culture I was in, I needed to change. And I knew that this connecting thing I was doing with my clients in Wall Street at Bank of America at this point, B of A, Merrill, at the point that was there, was great. And I was really good at it. And I can continue doing it. But I didn't enjoy doing it as much. The business had changed. And I also felt I was shortchanging the whole world by not sharing this unique way that I have about connecting with people. I felt like it was just limited, as huge as it was and as big as it would be, or as prestigious that most people would think it would be to your, oh, you're stuck with this. And this was one of those things where I knew I needed to do something different, but I didn't know what it was. And I needed to take the time to explore it, and it was kind of difficult to do it within that. And I kept looking, and eventually, to your point, I asked, I needed to explore it. I needed to do it for myself. I needed to do it for my soul, because I knew I was missing out on something. I missed out on that something that I found when I was in that entrepreneurial stage in the organic piece, or some of the work that I had done growing up with, my dad had a retail jewelry store, and I like to see what it was like to be your own boss and your own person, your own business. There was a lot of that screaming and saying, this is the time to do it. And, oh, by the way, at this time I had kids who I still had to pay for college. I had to do a bunch of things, to support mortgages and all that stuff. But I had an incredibly supportive wife, still do, that knew and believed in me. I believed in myself, and I knew I had something that I could package together that would be different and needed, and something from that my soul was crying out to say, you need to be doing this, whatever this was. And this turned out to be one of the aspects of it: podcasting and communicating and speaking and writing, and helping others better connect and recognizing the importance of this. That was why I said I had enough, and I need to share this with the world.
Capitalizers, this episode is sponsored by the best-selling book, Capitalize Your Finances, the how-to framework that takes you from compoundingly clueless to monetarily magnificent. Regardless of where you're at in your financial life, whether you're just beginning to express interest and commitment to your personal finances, at the pinnacle of your career, winding down into retirement, or thinking about your legacy for future generations, this book walks you through every step of the way so you can succeed on your terms and with your own values and passions guiding you. After reading this book, you will officially have Christopher A. Panayotu, the Cap in Capitalize, in your back pocket, guiding you in detail through every step of the way so that you can take charge of your finances, not the other way around. Head on over to Amazon.com today and start capitalizing your finances to the fullest with this incredible book, Capitalize Your Finances, the how-to financial framework that takes you from compoundingly clueless to monetarily magnificent. And now, back to the episode.
Well, and I was thinking about your current career in, hosting a podcast, consulting, writing, and specific to podcasting. And I don't know about you, but people have asked me all the time, and they just assume, okay, you've written this book, you're podcasting, you're coming out with a course, like you must be just crushing it financially. Yeah, wrong. Like it takes forever. And most people I've learned in podcasting, they do it because they genuinely love it, and they're doing it almost philanthropically. Now, you have made a career out of this. And so, for you, how long did that take for you to start to break even and really rev the engine? Was it gradual? Was there a specific guest? I know it wasn't me that turned the corner.
Oh, how could you shortchange yourself like that, Chris? Here's great question, and here's what I learned. There's a lot of different pieces that you need to combine together to make a really great recipe, right? The problem is you've got different ingredients and you kind of know how to prepare them or use them, but you don't necessarily always know, like almost, I'll switch the analogy from food to a symphony. It's like a lot of different instruments playing, but you got to get the music playing together in sequence and with a beat and a rhythm and a consistency. so the podcasting, and this is a true story, I was interviewing these great people, and a lot of it was to promote my own brand so that I could speak and get hired to speak the message that I deliver. It also was a method to hire people. And I thought that the audience members would be listening and they'd hear the stuff that I was doing and say, oh, this would be a natural fit. Share my brilliance, connect with great people, and people will eventually associate that you are someone that they should hire to come to your organization. That's partially true. And I've probably had a few one-offs from that. But what I didn't realize until maybe episode 150, and by the way, on one particular show, that's the Thrive Loud podcast, which now at the time we're recording this has something like 940 episodes. We're going to hit 1,000 sometime in 2024. I knew that there was some revenue source here, but I didn't know where it was. And the problem was it was staring right in front of me, and that the person I was having the conversation with is who I was connecting with. And if I had conversations with those I was connecting with in that seat, maybe there was an opportunity to figure out what their problems were by asking great questions that started conversations, that built relationships with who I can do business with. And that spun the podcast into this promotion engine of me and my speaking and all of that, into a client acquisition system, into understanding there's some guests that actually are the people that I should be helping. And that's how I targeted it. And there's not a CEO that won't want to come on my show to promote themselves. And also I now aim for the ones that need my help. So it took a long time. But was there one particular episode or one particular guest? No, it was more of a compilation of a whole bunch of things and building my brand and messaging along the way, along with these skills and how you can connect, all coming through this vehicle right here.
Yeah. Well, and you also provide, I keep talking about the podcast side just because that's where a lot of people know you, that are your followers. But there's a lot more to it than just that. And it's interesting because most people, if they just do the podcasting. So, for example, in a couple of weeks, we have the #1 classic car podcast host in the world coming on the show. And I may have told you about him. This guy gets 90,000 downloads a month.
Oh my God.
People it's insane. And that's what he does, right? Like that's it. And I remember he was saying that there was one episode that basically just catapulted him. And I think it might have been like Adam Carolla, right? Where you're trugging along and then it just went skyrocketed. And I've noticed if you just do a podcast, and again, I'm not degrading it, but like if that's it, you kind of have to bank on that. But if you've got all these other ancillary things, you can afford the gradual growth. And that also brings me to another question. I just thought of it as we were talking. So in starting your second venture, The Life of Lou, okay, I'm telling you, you need to copyright that. Okay,
I think you should just title that as the episode, The Life of Lou. That could be good.
The Life of Lou. The Life of Lou. It sounds like like a long lost book, that was published by like C.S. Lewis that just was never published.
It could have been. It was his notes. It was his show notes that he had for his own podcast that he wanted to do, called the Notes of Narnia. But I continue. Keep going.
Yeah. And so, I as I was thinking about this, because a lot of people in our industry they burn out. I'm very blessed that I love what I do. I have no intention of ever stopping, because it actually terrifies me to think of doing anything other than what I'm doing. Most people don't have that, but the blessing in our industry is, assuming you don't invest like a schmuck, you can kind of front load and set up the rest of your life financially to do whatever you want to do. It's almost like you're an angel investor to your future. And so when you spun off on your own, did you have to go like the traditional route of going to a bank and getting financing, or did you kind of self-finance yourself and set yourself up?
This was all self. This was digging into the dollars that I'd earned and do it that way. That could have been an option. Look, I have a lot of friends who leverage themselves to the hilt. I'm not as much of that type of person.
Yeah.
And nor is my wife. Well, we joke about that all the time. She came from a family where maybe too extreme in that sense. Like there's no mortgage. There's no debt whatsoever. Probably not the healthiest looking balance sheet from all of that. But also, the experience working in fixed income helped me understand a lot of that and understand how to invest. But yeah, but it wasn't as much of a financial investment as it was a time commitment investment, and focusing my efforts and knowing which projects to do it and being scrappy where you needed to, not dropping tons of money into certain programs or hiring certain people or doing certain things, learning those lessons of entrepreneurship and putting your time in allocation. Look, perfect example, when the year before COVID hit, I was doing a tremendous amount of speaking, and those dollars were looking really good. And it was like in the path of where you were going, but everything, it's never different this time. Mm-hmm. And when this happened, we dropped down a little bit, and now we needed to figure out what to deal with. And that shifted me into doing more consulting versus doing more speaking, and using those two hands that I showed you in the beginning of being that sales and leadership consultant, and then the speaking, writing, connecting would balance that up. But the linchpin between the two was the podcast. So being able to do that, yes, self-invested within what I needed to do, but then being smart with it and always being fairly conservative and never overly risky. I have a lot of fellow colleagues, they'll invest in any quick gimmick or course or thing that they need to do. I'm pretty particular in the things and the partners that I pick. And I think that has to do with knowing what's going to be the right synergistic fit for my business, my brand, and my heart. And I go with that. And every time you do that, and I think that that's true of any investing, right? When you look at what decision where you want to put your money, it could be an alternative investment opportunity. It could be a more traditional type of fund that you put things in. I think you have to know what you like and what you care about. And that's important, because that's probably what you know more about too, or at least trust the partners who you hire to help you do that, and make sure they understand all of your goals and dreams and visions and plans. That's essential. And not enough people do that. Not enough people do it. And by the way, I've been at fault at not doing it well, and maybe, not being as forward thinking and conservative as I should be, but I still believe in what I can deliver and what I can bring out. And, my family's still eating, so that's a good thing.
That's very true. Now they might be eating on the floor right now, because you're moving.
Promise. Okay. Yes. For those needing to know this week, and apologies to Chris a couple of weeks ago when we were packing and we were scheduled to do an interview, and I literally was breaking down the studio that I recorded. And I go, I think we're going to have to postpone this a couple of weeks. Yes. So yes, we're not quite in the final destination yet, but we're on our way. Hopefully by the time this airs, we will be. Yeah,
I mean, you might be eating from the floor, but it's a nice floor. Marble.
It's actually, it's really cool. Actually, you'd like it.
Yeah. So, well, and one thing I was just thinking of too, when you were saying that, hey, you know what, like pretty conservative on my fiscal strategies and all that, coming from fixed income, this is going to get really nerdy.
Yeah.
When you were on the street, not homeless for those of you listening, like Wall Street, you could have gotten away with that because interest rates were higher, fixed income strategies, you could earn, I mean, this is way back, but like in the 80s, you could have earned in the high teens on bonds.
Let's hope we don't go there anytime.
Yeah, let's hope we don't go there. But then in the 90s... I
kind of want to get back to the 5s and 4s as opposed to the 6s and 7s where we are now.
So. Yeah, but even in the 2000s, I mean, just... pretty conservative strategies. You were probably earning what you're earning today, and then if you wanted to juice it up a little, you could have earned the 8 to 9. So, even though you may consider yourself more conservative, during the time you actually got away with it because, frankly, like it's all relative. Now, if you were that way, I would imagine from like if you started in 18 and then through like 2021, that would have been really tough. Right, because you're squeezing blood out of a turnip.
Like the rates were so low for so long, specifically at that latter part. I mean, you can go look at where, like if you went right during the craziest after the financial crisis and all that stuff. Look at where I don't know if LIBOR isn't much of a barometer anymore, but where it was, I mean, it was basically zero for, who knows how long it was. And money was at that very, very low rate. And the 10-year was at 2%. So you were dealing with, then for a long period of time, those rates were crazy, crazy low. So you weren't making anything off those fixed income pieces, and they were expensive to own. So the changes that have happened and the ups and downs of where this stuff has gone, specifically with, inverted yield curves and confusing markets and uncertainty and, ridiculous amount of support coming from the government to dip 1 point or another.
Yeah.
The lessons I've learned with all of this is when there's that much chaos, it's important to stay the course, not be overly crazy. Like, I can only imagine, look, how many people complained of 21 and 22 with where markets were going, and watching, portfolio values, quote unquote, shrink. But if you were doing things and you were well balanced, these things tend to balance each other out in a certain way. There's a little zero-sum game there. So just get yourself a good financial manager.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I can tell you, I was actually more at peace in 2022 than I was in 2019, because 2019 was a year, you could have been, blind as a bat and you would have done fine. But that got me anxious, right? Because you're just trying to conserve the, what I call, premature future returns that the good Lord is blessing you with today. And then, 2022 comes around and people call, and I'm like, I knew something was up in 2022 when I went to counseling, because I go every couple of weeks. My counselor shuts the door and he turns to me and he goes, "I got a question to ask you." And I'm like, "Okay, what's going on?" And then he starts asking. I was like, this is my counseling session. And he goes, "How are you not worried about it?" And that's when I knew, okay, here's a guy who literally gets paid to be the most level-headed human in my life, and he's kind of, freaking a little bit. That's when I knew, okay, there's some issues there. You mentioned also something about, finding what works for you. One of and our listeners know this because I talk about it a ton. One of our episodes years ago, we had Dr. Craig Israelson on, who's the head professor of finance of BYU.
Nice.
And his whole thing was investing and planning is like salsa. And everyone loves salsa. Some like it sweet, some like it fruity, some like it spicy. But as long as you know your salsa, you can't help be successful. And I was like, whoa, that's so good. In fact, I reference him way too much in my book. Probably a disgusting amount, right? He's like, okay, you've probably...
Well, he's talking about salsa, so why wouldn't you? We love salsa.
Yes. Fun fact. And then we'll keep on going with the questions I have. Apparently in Australia, salsa does not have the same liking as the rest of the world. He was telling me that, I forget how it came up, but he used that phrase at one of the seminars that he was speaking at. I guess all of the people in the audience just looked at him, not mad, but just kind of like the combo of the resting, not so nice face, and then very confused. And then he found out it means something a little different down south. So,
okay, yes, you got to know your audience. You got to
know your audience.
Yes.
Yeah, but I would have assumed everyone loves salsa. Now, for our listeners that either run a podcast or are looking to run a podcast, because that's kind of the hot thing right now. What would be the best advice you would give them in order to go from not making any money to becoming profitable?
This feels like a volleyball bump, set, and spike. This is something I should be able to nail down. Now, so listeners need to know this for those who are out there. One of the things that I recommend everybody is you need a plan. And podcast isn't just a chance to record yourself and have your voice be out there. It can be, if utilized correctly, an integral growth component of your business. It literally can be your vehicle, your voice to attract new business, to grow your brand, to sell more products, to sell more of your services, to get hired to speak more, whatever your platform might be, to share your brilliance with the world in a way that is very much on brand with you. And I don't consider starting. I've always considered starting a podcast because I knew I wanted to connect with people, and I knew that became a great platform for my own personal brand. But with a good roadmap, a good consistency, something that I help to develop for people who come to a program that we run, which I guess I'll use in the plug section. We'll get to that. I'm not going to do it right now, but we'll do it at the end, I guess. And that is to develop a real podcast monetization map, to really actually map out where you should be using your podcast, how you can be guiding it in a way to get to the listeners that you need to connect to for your brand and your business. So for those that are entrepreneurs and doing it from that sense, that's how it can be used. If you're doing it for fun and you're doing it to get out a fun story or whatever it is, don't minimize the fact that you can use your fun thing as a business opportunity. I'm gonna share a story. It's not so much a podcast, but you could look at it similarly. One of the best marketers you will ever run into, go check out Jay Baer, Jaybaer. He's a Hall of Fame professional speaker. He's an amazing marketer. He's been doing it for 30 some odd years. And only last year, he just decided to follow his own passion. And he reviews tequilas. And you could look up Tequila Jay Baer on social. This is me giving him a huge plug. And in a window of like, to your example of the guy who has the 90,000 listeners on his car podcast, Jay does these reviews with his assistant, and the two of them together do these incredible reviews of tequila. And he's got, I don't know, maybe close to 200,000 followers, which it took him, he only has like 20,000 followers after 30 years of doing marketing business. This thing has exploded, and he's utilized it as a platform and a revenue maker for you. So even if it isn't part of your business, the ability to brand yourself, his tends up to be more of a video review as opposed to just a more podcast, but it's the same idea. And utilizing that platform is a great way to grow your brand and business. So don't just do it for the sense of fun. Think of what it could be and come up with a really good plan on where you could set your goals to.
And you brought up a good point. And I know you and I have talked about this ad nauseum behind closed doors, and now I guess open to the world, is there's nothing more defeating as an influencer, which I guess I consider myself that. I don't like that term, but such is life, where you put your heart and soul into one clip and you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much worldly wisdom. And then my social media manager, my brother, is like, okay, well, we've got to do this one, right? It's really surface level. And I'm like, gosh, this is so just stupid. And that's the one that just explodes. And then you look at the one with the worldly wisdom and it's got like, hardly anything. It's so defeating. It's probably no different than Jay Baer, where he's committed almost 3 decades to the sales side. And he's like, you know what? I'm kind of tired. I really like tequila. Assistant, like, let's review this. And it catapults him.
Yes.
And he's probably thinking like, man, I should have done this all along.
Well, and I think to your point about podcasting, you have to look at it not as just an audio platform or a video capturing you and sharing your message. You have to look at it like any other great content. I think some of the best content creators have thought about this is amazing content. Even what we're talking about, even though most of your listeners are saying, come on, you guys are full of yourself. Lou and Chris here chatting on a show, but Chris's platform is amazing content. It's mixing together people who have their own unique experiences in your particular platform on ways that you can, capitalize your finances, which is a brilliant idea. And it is who you are, literally who you are with the initials and everything. But it is so vital to recognize that this is your brand, this is your platform. Think about your own brand. Think about your own thing. For those that are starting a podcast, if you're questioning whether you should be doing it, you probably should. And at that point, you might need a game plan and figuring out how to get yourself started and what you need to do. All the technical stuff, all the actual platform and the audio and all that stuff is such a minor thing. I'm now, as you know, well, you didn't mention this earlier, but I'll share it now. I'm now executive producing podcasts out there for other platform people to help them grow their brand, grow their business, get the names out there, and do it in a really good way, taking all the lessons of my 1,000 some odd episodes of all the programs I've done and utilizing it in a way to fast track you so that you can connect, engage, and win on the podcasting platform and put some money in your pocket along the way.
That is awesome. Now, Lou, I hate to do this, but I think we're going to have to close this thing out. I wish I could go so much longer, But I do know that you are, literally eating from your marble floor. And
we have a carpet here. There's a rug. It's a minor rug, but it's okay. I just look at pictures of the kitchen is being installed as we speak. I would not eat on that floor right now. It's a little dirty. But
yes. Now is the rug? It's not a shag rug.
No, this is a carpet.
Yeah, because that would
two different places.
That'd be a thick dinner. So to wrap up the show before we close it out, I've got to give you the plug. Where can capitalizers go to best support and follow Lou?
So one, you can head anywhere on social media. You can find me at Thrive Loud, ThriveLoud, anywhere. That's at Thrive Loud on all the social platforms, whatever they're called these days, whether it's Twitter or X or Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn. You can find me there, Thrive Loud, and thriveloud.com, where you could look at some of the programs we have, and specifically the program that we are very much proud of, which is called the Speakeasy Pod Cash program. That is to convert, if you're a podcaster and you've been doing this for a while and you're listening to this program and you want to figure out how you can turn your podcast into podcast into podcash, this is the platform and the course to do it. We've been very successful helping people understand how they can do this better. And it's for some people who've been on this program, they may have even been in the program. It's a phenomenal way for you to really turn on the revenue switch for your business.
Yes, and I can speak highly. I can verify that highly. I could not support you enough, man. Lou, thank you so much for coming on Capitalize Your Finances. And for those of you listening in, as always, thank you for tuning in. If you are new to the brand, the Capitalize crew, I welcome you. For the newbies and veterans out there that keep coming back, if you have any questions about today's episode, you know the drill, or you will know the drill. Either give us a call at 253-214-3050. That's 253-214-3050. Or you can shoot me, Chris Ray Paniotti, the Captain Capitalize, and email chris@capitalizeyourfinances.com. Lastly, if you want to be a guest on the show, or you have a person in mind that you would love to have on our show, head on over to capitalizepodcast.com. Hit us up in the direct messages. We look at it every single day, and we are answering your questions like clockwork. As always, I'm your host, Chris Ray Paniotti, the Cap in Capitalize. And until next time, keep capitalizing.
You should always seek counsel of the appropriate advisor prior to making any investment decision. All investments are subject to risk, including the loss of principal. It is important to keep in mind that investments in fixed income products are subject to liquidity risk, interest rate risk, financial risk, inflation risk, and special tax liabilities. Interest may be subject to the alternative minimum tax. Christopher Paniotti is a registered representative with and securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, and member FINRA SIPC. The investment professionals are affiliated with LPL Financial and are conducting business using the name Capitalize Your Finances, a separate entity from LPL Financial. Lou Diamond and any other individual or company mentioned in this podcast are not affiliated with Capitalize Your Finances or LPL Financial.